This episode is brought to you by Jinx, the superfood-powered dog kibble everyone's been talking about. See the results for yourself and try their 1-month transformation. Within the first few weeks, you'll see how Jinx can help with your dog's energy, mood, and even digestion. And it's all thanks to the high-quality ingredients they use, like organic chicken, Atlantic salmon, and grass-fed beef. Try the 1-month transformation today. Find Jinx in your local Walmart.
Tell me if this at all sounds familiar. The buck stops in your shooting lane, and you're already at full draw. You float your 30-yard pin behind his shoulder and squeeze your release. The buck dashes off, disappears at the shot. But man, that shot felt good. With shaky hands, you start texting your buddies, telling them you just killed a good one. Then, just like you're supposed to, you wait 30 minutes, climb down, go look for blood. But it takes you a few minutes to find that first drop. Then it takes you a few minutes more to get on the blood trail. You can follow it easily at first, but then after 50 yards or maybe 75, you lose the track altogether. So you start picking apart nearby deer trails, but you can't find another damn drop. It's nearly dark now. The texts from your buddies are flying in. They're telling you, the deer has to be dead, keep looking. They're telling you, back out and just wait for the morning. Or, hurry the hell up, find the buck before the coyotes do. How did this happen? And what should you do next? It turns out that the answer is pretty simple. You should get out of there and you should call Shane Simpson, or someone just like him. Shane is a blood tracking dog handler, and each season, he and his dog Callie help hunters recover dozens of marginally hit deer.
He's a freaking giant.
Okay, on the way. Did you hear him? It's a freaking giant!
After several seasons of tracking, Simpson has learned a thing or two about recovering whitetails. I'm Editor-in-Chief Alex Robinson, and in this season of the Outdoor Life Podcast, we're interviewing a roster of die-hard deer hunters. We're going to try to learn some of their secrets, and we're going to share those secrets with you. First on our list, of course, is Shane Simpson. Get into it a little bit of just like how you started training a tracking dog, why you got interested in it in the first place, and how it all began.
Well, it's a long and complicated story, but I'll try to make it brief. So I guess my interest started when I was living up here. You know how, and then social media came along, and you'd see someone like, "Oh, I shot a good one." They'd show a picture of a bloody arrow, and people would chime in, "If you need any help tracking, I'll help you." And I always knew the outcome of what it was going to be. You know, the post the next morning, no luck. We searched all over and couldn't find it. I was like, man, if they had a dog, that would, help a lot better. But at that point, I was just the thought, okay, if they had a dog or something, and it wasn't legal here at the time. And so I went on a media hunt, turkey hunt down in Illinois one year with the guys from the NWTF and some other outdoor companies. And we were at a place where a tracker lived next door. It was a whitetail outfitter. His name was Tracker John. You probably know.
I've heard of him,
okay.
Yeah. He
was there, and so he would hang out and camp in the evenings at the cabin. We socialize, and he would start telling these tracking stories. And man, it was so interesting. Listen to him, the stuff he went through. All was lost, and his dogs would find the deer. And I was telling John, I was like, man, you need to start videoing this or documenting this somehow. This is so interesting for me to hear in person. I mean, I think about what all the other people out there that would love to hear this. And so that kind of got my interest in, I want a dog for myself, because this sounded really cool to be able to find people's deer. Well, we left there, and in the following fall, I was deer hunting, and I think I'd filled a tag or two. And so I started taking buddies that, don't get to hunt much and maybe weren't very experienced deer hunters. But I started taking them to my little honey hole spots on public. And I took a neighbor, and he hadn't shot one with his bow before, and grunted up a nice little 8-pointer. And I remember telling him, I saw what he was shooting, the big mechanical. And I was like, whatever you do, don't hit him in the shoulder. Mm-hmm. And there's a little bit of blades of grass in front of his, right behind the shoulder where I wanted him to hit. And so when he let the arrow fly, it hit smack dab in the shoulder bone and didn't even penetrate an inch or two, it looked like. I mean, it's like whack.
Yeah.
Even lighted knock off.
Oh, no.
And that deer hauled out of there. And I was like, why did you shoot him in the shoulder? He said, well, there's a little bit of grass right there. And I said, the grass was right next to his body. It would have went right through it, Anyway, I was like, well, let's go down and see what we got. And we may have to back out. And so we went down there and we couldn't find the arrow. I didn't even know if it fell out or not. It wasn't lighted up. The knock wasn't anymore. And we couldn't find any blood, just a drop right there, right after the impact. And I was like, man, we'll have to come back in the morning and search for this deer, grid search. And so we put one of those posts on social media. Hey, we got this deer. Anybody want to help out? And we had, 3 or 4 volunteers. And I said, okay, meet at McDonald's. Here's the address, or here's the location tomorrow morning at 7:30, whatever. The next morning, no one showed up.
Oh.
And I was like, and so my buddy, he has his own company. He paid one of his employees to help us grid search. And we searched most of the day. It was early afternoon, it was after 12 o'clock when we stopped. And we were running the property lines, and then we were just scouring areas we couldn't. Anyway, I don't want to drag this out too long. It was at that point that I said, I cannot rely on other people. And a situation like this, a dog would have been great because we could have put the dog on it that morning. It would have taken us, a good trained dog would have taken us and let us know whether we found, the deer was dead, or it would have found the deer. Fortunately for us, though, I had a trail camera out, and 2 weeks later, or maybe less 2 weeks later, I got a picture of that deer with the wound, and he was feeding by the camera. I had video of him, and so he looked like he was going to make it. Yeah. But I was still kind of pissed off that people had committed it and they just didn't show up, and it basically ghosted us. And so at that point I said, I'm getting a tracking dog. And that's I started my search. It was the following year, but I started training her. And when she was, I guess she was a year old when she went on her first tracks. And the rest is history. Yeah, so talk about that. Like, how'd you pick the dog that you picked? This is Callie. For folks who don't know, Callie Chronicles. You can see, all kind of the tracking adventures. Yeah, she's a blue tick coonhound. And when I initially started looking at, I joined the United Blood Trackers, and I was doing a lot of research online, just Googling this and that. There were so many arguments, not arguments, but I guess conflicting opinions. Yes, exactly. About how you should train your dog. Some believe, blood, and some believe just hooves only as soon as possible. And I lean towards the hooves only because my thought was, if you've got blood, what do you need a dog for? I want to be able to track the deer when you don't have blood. There's no blood on the ground. And that was kind of more of the lines of the thinking of the United Blood Tracker, or John, I'm forgetting his last name. Anyway, he's the one that founded United Blood Trackers. He passed away recently. But in his books and all the stuff, I was, not just him, but there was other sources that I was reading. You want to introduce your dog early on to, something that is easy for them to track and make them interested in, like a piece of beef liver or something like that. And before I get into that, I should back up how I picked my dog. So looking at all these things, a lot of the trackers were using like little small dogs, wire-haired Dachshunds and things that they would get from Europe. It's big over there to use the smaller breeds, the wire-haired Dachshunds. But my question to them was, I live in an area where there's a lot of water, marshes and whatnot. I may be going through. How's a little dog handle that stuff? And some of the trackers that have the smaller dogs that deal with water said, we just pick the dog up and carry around to the other side of the water, and hopefully they can pick up the line again. It's like, no, I need a taller dog that can go through that stuff. Yeah. So I started looking for a larger breed, a taller breed, and the coonhound or a red bone. It didn't really matter to me. I just wanted some type of hound. My thought was the hounds are going to be a good scenting dog. Yep. So then I found a blue tick coonhound, a guy that bred these dogs for bear hunting. Mm-hmm. So we agreed on a price, and then we met at Walmart in Hudson, Wisconsin. And he brought a whole litter of the male pups. He had his daughter go round up all the male pups. And then I had my daughter pick one out. And I've read how you pick a dog out. You don't want the one that's the feistiest, and you don't want the one that's hides in the corner. You kind of want the middle ground. And so I saw one that was kind of that fit into that category. It's not the most eager one, but it wasn't just laying around. And it came up to the edge of the basket. And my daughter said, "I want that one right there." I said, "Okay, we'll take that one." We get home, and I finally hold the dog and look at it real good in the light. And I say, "This is not a male dog." And she had already named it Callie, after Sheriff Callie the cat, little cartoon. Anyway, so first thing I did to introduce her to tracking was I got a deer hoof. Well, I did the little beef liver first. Yeah. They're gonna eat that. I just took a little piece of beef liver on a string and drug it, a short distance.
And she's like a puppy at this point.
Yeah, 9 weeks old. And immediately sniffed it out and found it, 10 yards away. So then I introduced her to some deer hooves, and I can't recall where I got the deer hooves from, probably a deer I shot. But I have a video of her as a puppy. I would let her play with it in the house, and she would bark at it, little puppy. Burr, burr, you know how they bay? Yeah. And then she would growl at it and play around with it. And carpet is not a good medium for scent. Okay. But I would attempt to drag the leg around the house and hide it. It was wintertime at the time and cold outside and snowy. And she would follow it and find it hidden behind a door, or I'd drag it upstairs and hide it, and then I'd put her on it and let her find it. So then I started doing little deer drags out there in the yard. And I dragged across the yard right behind the garage, and she'd find it and she'd bark at it. Now she doesn't bark, like now she growls at me if I try to get to a deer. But that was how I introduced her. And then I started walking the hooves, and this is a progression over time. You want to make it somewhat easy for them so that they don't lose interest, and it makes it easier for them. But as soon as you see that they're getting it pretty easily, then, maybe age the track, hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, make the tracks longer, make it more difficult by just walking one hoof only. So what they're basically tracking is the interdigital gland scent in between the hooves. And then injured deer also, I'm told, or I've read, that they release other odors when they're injured. And
because of the stress and
the dogs will pick up on that. And that's probably why a coyote finds your deer before you do a lot of times. They cut that trail of a deer. They've crossed how many deer paths they've gone through the woods, and then they cut one they smell, says, "Oh, this one's injured." And then they follow it right to your deer. They gobble it up before you can get there 6 hours later or overnight. Tracking dogs doing the same thing. That's how they're able to stay on one particular deer when there's a bunch of them out there. I've tracked deer shot at a bait pile, and there's been 10 deer there that afternoon. The hunter said, "Yeah, there was deer coming and going all afternoon, and I shot this one." Well, it took a couple of restarts, but she was able to figure out, okay, this is the one, this is where it went, and she took me to that deer. We found it 600 yards later. But anyway, so you progressively wanted to make it more difficult for them, and I never used blood on her for training, only that little beef liver at the beginning. And I'm not the best trainer. It was my first dog attempted train, but she's turned out to be a pretty good tracking dog. Yeah. But that's how I progressed. And so I got to the point where I would walk a hoof 800 yards or 1,000 yards, leave it overnight, and bring her back the next morning and point to the ground and say, "Find it." And then also you want to set it up so that when you're tracking, you have different gear. Like I'll put on my orange game vest I keep my supplies in, and she has her tracking lead and everything. Yeah. She knows when we're getting ready to go track it. Yeah. And I also say, "Do you want to go on a mission?" And she goes berserk at the door, because otherwise, if I say, "You want to go outside?" and she just, okay, and I let her outside. But if I say, "Oh, you want to go on a mission?" she goes berserk. Now we have the other little pup, the little Boykin Spaniel. He knows what it means too. And they start wrestling and barking and carrying on. They'll tear down the house. They're so excited to get out the door and go and track a deer.
They know it's time to go to work. Yeah. So those first couple seasons, of actually running her on, real tracks to try to find, either your deer or someone else's deer. What were the most surprising or kind of interesting things to you as you kind of progressed through those first early years?
Well, the first tracks I went on, there was 2 tracks I went on, was for a friend. I said, if you shoot a deer, give me a call. I want something before I start tracking for the general public. I wanted a confidence booster for me. And we had a tricky one right out the gate. So he shot 2 deer. He had video of it. Well, he actually shot 1, and I was en route to track it, and he called me back. I said, I got 2 for you now. So I just shot another one. So the first one he thought fell within sight. He saw it disappear 100 yards or so away, but he wasn't sure if it went down or not. The second one he thought was a good hit, but it ran off, and he didn't see where, what happened to it. So I said, let's get the easy one. I'm using air quotes. Let's get the easy one now. And it turned out to be an easy one. She tracked that deer in less than a minute. Wow. From the time I said find it, she went beeline straight to it.
And you're like, wow, this is pretty easy.
Yeah, great job.
Yeah.
I'll find all of them. So the second one, I put her on it, and the hunt, he was telling me the deer went that way, but Callie kept wanting to go. He was saying the deer went, say, east, and Callie wanted to go north.
Okay.
I was like, you sure it went that way? He's like, positive, it went that way. I was like, well, she wants to go this way. I said, let's just see where she's taking me. And so we went through this thick stuff, and finally we didn't make it 80 or 100 yards and jumped a deer and found blood. I said, your deer went this way. I said, let me see your video. So we went back and watched his video on the little camcorder. And what happens when he shot the second deer, I guess, in the adrenaline and the emotion and everything, he shot it with a bow. His deer took off, but there was another one standing just to the left that he didn't notice, and it ran to the right, to the east, and they crisscrossed right after the shot. And so his eyes caught that one going east, and he followed it. And the one he actually shot took off north. And so that's how he got confused. But anyway, that deer jumped up and it took off running, and I let Callie continue. Now she's like, brr, brr. She's just a hot track. This deer, just jumped up. She's going nuts. It's the first time I had her bay, barking on a track, and that ended up being a problem going forward for a couple more years, but we worked through it. But I saw like gut matter and stuff. Uh-huh. And I was like, this deer's been gut shot or something, and it's still alive. Yeah. And this was my first experience with backing out, and the hunters, that was my first experience with a hunter telling me the deer went one way and it went the other way. We'll encounter that as trackers. You see different things in the heat of the moment. And then the other one was, we need to back out. And the hunter was like, no, let's just give it 30 more minutes. And this is a thing I deal with a lot of people when they call. It's like, yeah, I shot a deer. How long did you wait for your track? Oh, about 30 minutes to an hour, and we jumped it. So we backed out and gave it another 30 minutes to an hour and track. It's like, no, once you jump a deer, you back out and give it, 6 hours minimum, overnight if possible, depending on if you shot in the evening or whatever. But he was like, yeah, we just 30 more minutes. And I was like, no, the deer's not going to die in 30 minutes. I knew that much at the time, even though I was early in tracking. I knew that if a deer's still alive, then it was. And plus, I'd read enough, learning how to, before I even got a dog, about different shot scenarios. So I kind of knew that this deer needed time. And then here comes the excuse I would hear a lot from other hunters, why they track so soon. Well, I got to work in the morning. Yeah. You got to plan ahead for that. If you go hunting, you got to think, okay, I could shoot a deer. I may be out here late processing or getting it out of the woods, or I may have to come back tomorrow and track it. You should have a plan that either I call in for work or I take a vacation day or something. And if you can't do any of that, then maybe don't go hunting that evening. And I know time is critical for a lot of people. They have to go hunting when they can, but you have to think of all those scenarios that maybe something doesn't go right. But I told him, I said, don't worry about it, because he was a friend. I said, go to work tomorrow. I'll come back out and track this deer. If I find it, I'll call you and you can come deal with it. And so that's what I did. I brought Callie back out the next morning, put her on the track. She took me straight to the deer and went another 200 yards. And it bedded up, and sure enough, it had guts hanging out. He'd hit it low in the belly. So that was my first experience, and that was I had a little bit some of the gamut. Yeah, what you experienced.
You kind of got a preview of all the things to come that you would experience in the seasons down the road. we'll be right back after the break.
This episode is brought to you by Jinx, the superfood-powered dog kibble everyone's been talking about. See the results for yourself and try their 1-month transformation. Within the first few weeks, you'll see how Jinx can help with your dog's energy, mood, and even digestion. And it's all thanks to the high-quality ingredients they use, like organic chicken, Atlantic salmon, and grass-fed beef. Try the 1-month transformation today. Find Jinx in your local Walmart.
It was early on in our tracking, either first or second, where we had that one we tracked for over a mile over the course of 2 days. And that was also a buddy of mine that had been like 4 hours since he shot it, 4 or 5. And he had tracked it a little bit, and then he marked it well with tissue, which I love it when people mark a blood trail with tissue. It not only helps you later if you have to back out for yourself, even without a dog, it helps the tracker so they can start it at the hit site. And they can, without, because when we're tracking, we go pretty fast sometimes.
Yeah.
And I can see tissue go by as we're tracking. I say, oh, okay, she's on it. She's locked onto this deer. So that gives us confirmation, and we don't have to second guess. We don't have to say, hey, did the deer go this way as we're tracking? And so anyway, I put her on it, and she took us up to the woods through all the tissue and stuff. And we kept going. We were finding blood. I was dropping tissue as I found blood. And we came up to this big field, and I couldn't find any blood. And I brought her back and restarted her, and she took me the same kind of route. And he had heard a deer in this thicker area near that field at one point, and he's like, I don't think it was my deer. And I was like, it was probably bedding here. You bumped him, because we'd gone quite a ways at this point. Anyway, so we had, I think we had the walkie-talkies. Pretty sure. I don't remember. But anyway, I remember going across this big field, and there was nothing. And either we were yelling at each other or talking to a CB. And he's like, let's just stop and come back tomorrow. I said, all right, I'm going to let her go to the wood line and then stop her there.
Because this is late at night.
Yeah, this is like 10 or 11 o'clock at night.
Okay.
And so I let her go across this field that was, a couple hundred yards across. And we got to the wood line, and there was a four-wheeler trail that cut right into the woods. And she took me straight there, and I stopped her. I said, all right, we'll start back here in the morning. And I looked down, and there was a drop of blood. I said, we're on it for sure.
Yeah.
So I went back and told them what we found. Went over and showed them the quarter-size drop of blood. It looked like the deer just stood there and dropped his hit straight down. It wasn't a splatter or anything. It was a drop straight down. I said, this deer stood here, and then he probably went down this trail. Next morning, bring out there, right at daybreak. And I tried to film some of this early on. I had a GoPro mounted to my head and stuff. And not enough experience trying to track and run cameras to really do this successfully. Yeah. And I finally, after getting tangled in bushes and stuff, I was like, heck with this. I didn't film anymore. I put it away. But she took us down this full little trail. We already got permission from all the neighbors. We were on the neighbor's land. And we went to a food plot, and into the other end of the food plot, and she took me down this huge hill. There's like a logging road that went down this hill. This is like bluff country stuff. And I was like, girl, you better be right. I don't feel like going up and down these hills. And so now it's like, you know what? I'm going to stop her and talk to the hunter. And before I go invest time going down these hills, let's look for some blood and confirm that we're on the track. And we'd also passed a couple trail cameras too. So I came back to the food plot, and Hunter was there, and we talked to each other. And he's like, yeah, I found what I think's a wound bed over here. And that was right before she went down the hill. So we went over and looked, and sure enough, we found a little bit of hair and some blood. And I restarted. This time she didn't take me down the hill. She did, but then she cut into some thick stuff, and she started acting weird and barking and pulling. And I went back, and she'd go another direction, barking, pulling. And I'm like, I don't know what she's doing. She's acting funny. And he's like, let me call the landowner and see if we can check these trail cameras. So we called the landowner and got permission to look at them. He said, don't delete them. Anyway, sure enough, there were some deer that went by the trail camera, and there was us. And there was some coyotes, a pack of coyotes.
Oh, interesting.
But no buck on the camera. And I'm like, how did he get by? And it caught pictures of everything else. But I say, I bet that's why Callie was acting weird at that wound bed and going in all different directions. She was following those coyotes where they had walked or something. So I put her back on the near the wound bed, and she took me down that hill. And as we're going down the hill, we got about halfway down. We saw a drop, speck of blood on the green leaf. I said, oh, she was right the entire time. We went down this hill, past another couple trail cameras. She came out to a little county road, and she wanted to go across it. She got to the other side, she sniffed, and she came back to this side and wanted to go down the road. I stopped her and brought her back and talked to the hunter again. This is kind of a progression of, we're analyzing everything. At this point in our tracking career, I didn't 100% trust her every move. I should have.
Yeah.
It probably hurt her in the long run because I kept stopping her.
Yeah.
It was training her,
training her to stop. In some ways. Yeah.
And anyway, we found a speck of blood. Now, this was like the last speck we would find on this track. It was on a blade of grass right before the county road. I said, she's right. He said, you think she went across? I was like, well, she took me across, but then she turned around. I said, I don't see any obvious deer trails over there. He's been staying on deer trails and open paths for most of the time, for the most part. And I was like, I want to see where she was taking me down the road. He said, all right, I'm going to search around up here for some blood, confirming whether she went across the road or not. So she took me a third of a mile down the road, edge of the road, like we were just walking the dog. And she was steady sniffing. And we got past a little marshy pond, wet area, and it kind of tapered down, neck down near the road. It was drier, and it was still like marshy cattail stuff. And she cut off the road down in there on a deer trail. At this point, I can't see the hunter anymore. I don't know where he's at. And I just marked that spot, and I backed out. I went back up there to find him and let him know that she took me down and wanted to cut into that swamp. He said, well, we can go back down there in a little bit. He said, can you have her win this marshy area first? I said, okay. So we got on the downwind side and let her sniff, and she showed no interest and wanted to go in there. And so we ended up working around, and as we were cutting in to get back to the road, she stopped on the trail and turned left, and she wanted to go that way. Turns out we had cut that trail that we had cut down earlier. We had cut across it, and she had cut the scent of that deer. So basically we made a shortcut. And so we started going, and there was a four-wheeler path that went up the hill. And so the hunter said, I'll just walk this and look. And I said, all right. So we were going along, and we went another 50, 60 yards, and there was an intersection of trails, and she went right by it. And then she stopped and did a 180, came back, and then took the trail to the left and went barreling up through there. And then as I looked to my left, I saw a leg sticking out from under a bush. And I was like, there's a deer. At this point, I wasn't sure it was our deer, but it was a deer. And I went over there, and there it was. You could see the wound hole in it where the guy said he shot. It was a big old buck, and he was laying there expired. And early on in the track, I'd gotten some burdock stuff in my eyes. Mm-hmm. And so we had to stop the track to clean that out. So when we found this deer, I said, hey, can you give me a hand over here? I got another stick in my eye. He was like, boy, you and them sticks. And, he was complaining. He said, where are you at? I said, I'm over here in these bushes. And he'd come around and he was, where are you at? And I'm like, right here. And he finally come around digging through the bushes, and he's like, and he saw the deer, and he's like, oh, you found a deer. Is that mine? And I was like, yeah. And he was screaming and carrying on a few profanities. He was pretty happy about it. But we had passed a bunch of trail cameras en route to there, and we went and checked those also. I wanted to talk about this for a moment. That buck was on none of the cameras. I mean, we were talking 6 or 7, 8 cameras as deer went by them. And the hunter says that on a couple of them, he found blood behind the cameras. Yeah. And this is a big mature buck, right? And so the only thing I can imagine, this deer doesn't know they're trail cameras, but what happens when you walk in front of a trail camera? Depending on if it's night or day, that little infrared filter flick, that's that clicking noise you hear in a camera. Yep. It swings in and out of the way. He probably didn't like the noise that happens. Yep. It conditioned him to say, look, if I go around behind it, I don't hear that click. Right. And that's the only thing we can theorize. That he didn't know that they were trail cameras. He just learned to avoid the noise that it makes in those infrared lights coming on, just going behind the camera. Yeah. And so that's why he was not on any of the cameras. He had decided, knew where they were all located. And that's why we were on camera, the coyotes that were following him. And we think, and we think the coyotes bumped him out of that one wound bed, and he was still alive during the night. And when we stopped at that four-wheel trail, that quarter-size drop of blood, he was only a few hundred yards from us, and we didn't bump him, I don't feel. But had we continued tracking, we would have. Mm. When we got to processing him, he was still limber and he was still warm inside.
Yeah.
And so he hadn't expired too long before we got to him.
Yeah. So how far was that from the hit site to where you found it?
1.3 miles.
Wow.
And the shot went through both lungs and the liver.
Unbelievable.
So the liver is, on the right-hand side, and it lays at an angle. Uh-huh. So depending on which side of the deer you shoot it, it's possible to miss the liver and hit the lungs.
Right.
And then a complete opposite shot, exact shot, but on the opposite side, you could center punch the liver and hit one lung or not even hit the lungs at all.
Yeah.
But in his case, I'm trying to think. I think he hit it on the left side, slightly quarter in two. It went through the left lung, it basically center punched the left lung, went through the back of the right lung and hit the liver.
Wow.
And when we got to looking at that left lung that he center punched, it was calloused up and had like lumps and stuff. He had been damaged prior. And so we don't think he was actually, it looked like it had been collapsed at one point or something. We don't think that lung was really, getting hit affected his ability to move. And he hit the back end of the right lung. So he still had most of the lung, most of the arteries and blood flow and stuff is more towards the front of the lung. And then the liver, he just hit one end of the liver, so he didn't center punch it and hit like the artery and blood flow in there. So it allowed the deer, even though it was hitting two lungs and a liver, he was able to keep going. There was a hunter on the neighboring properties. He'd shot a deer and he didn't recover it. And we think that was the one. He had shot it and got a one lunger and it collapsed it and that deer survived it. And so that was kind of I remember it being early on in our tracking career. It was pretty epic. And I went and sat down and filmed an interview with the hunter to put it on my YouTube channel.
Yeah. I mean, without a dog, you're never finding that deer.
No. Never would have found that deer.
Because there's no blood to track, basically.
Yeah, that one speck of blood near the county road. And at that point, most hunters would go straight across the road. Yeah. This deer took a 90-degree left and followed the road for a third of a mile. Even the hunter was talking about it. It's like, I don't think that deer went down that road. I can't see a deer going down a road on a busy county road, right on the edge and cars passing. I'm like, well, who knows when this deer walked down this road, right? And were there any cars out? How many times has he made this path, in the middle of the night to get around that little marshy area? It's an easy path right down the road.
Yeah. This gets into something that I want to ask you about, without being too critical of bow hunters and deer hunters out there. What are some of the things that we kind of mess up, you think? Some common trends that you see, like, that we kind of mess up when we're analyzing our own hits, like our own shooting, our own shots, and our own blood trails and own deer recoveries?
There's a couple things. Number one, or a few things, I should say. Number one, we track too soon. Mm-hmm. People are too eager to go out there and track. Number two, most people don't fully understand the deer anatomy. I'm in that same boat just a few years ago, about the liver. I was telling you, I just thought, you see these targets or these pictures online, the liver smack dab against the back of the lungs. Yep. And it's not, it's sitting at a major angle to the lungs and tucked off to the right side. The lungs don't go back as far as most people think. I'm like, I'm going to shoot them right behind the shoulder. I don't want to hit bone. It doesn't take very far behind the shoulder. And when I say shoulder, I think a shoulder up, the shoulder blade up top. Right. But most people are saying shoulder. They're talking about that region from the brisket up along the leg. That's the shoulder area. Right. It doesn't take much distance behind that leg to get into the liver and guts area because of the way the lungs are shaped at an angle coming from top to bottom going down. There's so many people I see that comment not only on pictures of deer that I didn't track, but deer I actually tracked, and I post pictures of it. It's like, why'd you have to track that? It looks like a great shot. I'm like, it was a gut shot. Mm-hmm. The angle, it looks like but it doesn't take very far back and you're getting liver and guts, or if it was a liver shot. And I think a lot of people think liver kills pretty quick. It does in some cases. I've seen it kill it within, 15 minutes. But I've tracked deer and recovered them 16 hours or longer after they were shot, and they were still alive. And it was like just a liver shot. Mm-hmm. Gut shots can, depending on where you hit them, can kill an animal within 10 or 12 hours, or even maybe a couple of days. And so I think, people track too soon. They're too confident in where they hit, and they think, double lung. And then also they don't fully understand the anatomy. And once you track enough deer, I cut open every deer I recover. I either stay there to take pictures, or I do it myself so that I can get the pictures if they're not willing to do it right away, if they allow me, actually. But and then the third thing was gauging the amount of blood. They say, I got lots of blood. We hear that a lot of times. Calling a tracker, I got a deer, got lots of blood, and then just stopped.
Yeah. And
when you get there, you see this, with air quotes, lots of blood. It's a few drops. I could cut my finger and leave more blood than this.
Yeah.
Deer has, I can't remember how many liters of blood they have, but they have to lose like most of that before
it's fatal.
Yeah. And so you're talking about taking a glass out of your cupboard and filling it full of blood and pouring that before I start considering that lots of blood.
Yeah. Okay, so walk me through this scenario. I shoot a deer. I'm hunting some private land in Wisconsin. One evening, I shoot a deer with my bow. I think it's a good hit. I wait 30 minutes, the typical thing. I go down, look at blood, look at the hit site. The blood doesn't make me feel as confident as I was when I initially made the shot. But I'm able to follow it a little way. Say maybe I go 100 yards, and now the blood dries up. It's starting to get dark. I'm not feeling good about what's going on right now. Like, say I want to call in a tracking dog at this point. What should I do from here? And have I done anything at this point that's been bad? Have I messed anything up already at this point?
Well, I had to ask a few questions to find that out, but don't walk on the blood trail. Try not to avoid getting it on your boots. Scent molecules, everything. Wherever the deer walk off to one side. You're okay analyzing it. How far did you track it?
About 100 yards.
About 100 yards. Yeah, you're fine. Did you think it was a good shot initially?
Yes.
Okay, you're fine still. I don't want people to call a tracker every time they shoot a deer. But, you're confident in your shot. You got down. You started tracking it. You stayed off to one side. Maybe mark the trail with tissue and stuff. Don't use Onyx. Onyx is a great tool for scouting and hunting. But GPS apps, no matter what phone or what app you're using, they don't give you the precision of a piece of tissue on the ground.
Even if it's off by 10 feet.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything good.
Even if it's off by a few feet and you're in thick cover and you can't find that drop of blood again, then you're scrambling around trying to find it. Just mark it with some tissue. I had a fellow that I tracked for, and he had marked it on Onyx in a cornfield. And by the time I got there, they were harvesting the corn. So all we had to go on was his course. And I went ahead and turned my tracker on Onyx, and I put Callie on it, and we went and tracked. And when I compared mine to his, it was pretty much a dead match. So we knew she was on it, but I had no visible sign because he said, well, it's right in here somewhere. You got to trust this GPS location. And even after they harvested, I could have looked for stalks for blood, but it was just a coleslaw on the ground. So anyway, mark it with tissue if you can. I know I don't do it myself sometimes, like the deer I shot in Nebraska recently. Yeah. I saw him go down, so I wasn't really concerned about marking a blood trail. And he poured a lot of blood. Mm-hmm. Now I wish I had people could see it, but when I say a lot of blood, the cattails were painted red. Yeah. So that was a lot of blood. Yeah. But anyway, back to your track. Yeah, you track at 100 yards. You start having questions about it. The blood may be darker than you like. There's no bubbles in it. And don't get excited to see bright red blood. Bright red blood doesn't always mean a lung shot or something, or arterial shot. Bright red blood can be muscle. Because blood coming from the lungs is highly oxygenated. Yeah. It's red. It's bright red. It goes out to the muscles of the body, different parts of the body. It's still bright red. And then the muscles expend that oxygen out of it, moving around. and it returns that blood back to the heart to be pumped to the lungs again, and it comes back darker. So you can hit a deer in the leg, and you may get some darker blood, or you may get some bright red blood, and that gives a lot of people gets their optimism up. Oh, bright red, he's lung hit.
Yeah.
Blood to me is just blood, bright or whatever. It doesn't really tell you a whole lot. Now, if you start getting that blood that's darker, that has a purplish hue to it, almost looks like a purple pearl, kind of has a sheen, has a type of essence to it. You'll know it after you see it enough. That a lot of times means liver. A darker blood also, especially if you're tracking a deer and it's bright and also it gets darker, sometimes means the oxygen is being depleted out of this deer. He's running out of air, and he's, it's like holding your breath and running. You're not supplying the blood anymore with oxygen. So that could be a good sign this deer is, lung hit, and he's not getting fresh oxygen to his blood. But anytime you see like it starts to turn darker, if it looks like maybe liver hit, or you just start questioning yourself, mark last blood and mark it with something visible, highly visible. Mm-hmm. I've tracked for people that have marked it with a camouflage glove, camouflage hat, hung it up. They've marked it with corn stalks, and when we're tracking them next to a cornfield, and you're like, which stalks are yours and which ones, they actually mark the blood trail with pieces of corn stalks along the cornfield. Yeah. You use what you have, but use something different than what I'm tracking, something that I can easily see. Right. And we can easily find again, and then just back out. And
you don't want them to grid search before you
grid search is your last resort. Yeah. If it comes to the thought in your mind, it's like, let's call up some buddies and grid search, call a duck tracker first. Yeah. Because, your odds of recovery go way down with a tracking dog once you've grid searched. And I keep stats and data on all our tracks, and we have on tracks that are not grid searched, whether you tracked it at all or you tracked it 600 yards, we have a 60-something or 60-something% success rate. Mm-hmm. And on tracks where people grid search for the deer and then called us, we have something like a 10% success rate. Mm. And what happens is, as you and your buddies are walking along the trail, of course, you're going to show them, hey, this is where I had blood and this is where I had, and they're all following you. And most people, especially getting thicker cover, and the deer trail is the only path to take. Everyone's walking down the deer trail. You're picking up scent molecules from the deer, the injury scent molecules, and you're picking up blood and scent from the blood. And then you get the last blood, and you and all your buddies branch out and start scouring the woods. Mm. Well, the dog comes in there, he can't tell the difference between, this injured deer, same injured deer. He smells it, went to the left, now it went to the right, and it went down the middle, went in 5 different directions. Dog's got to figure out which one is the right one. Mm-hmm. It's no different than I'm taking yellow paint and painting a line, and then I paint 5 lines in different directions. You tell me which one did I paint first. Right. So the dog has that same problem, and you gotta work your way through that grid search. And depending on how much they grid search, it may be impossible to break through it and take the right path. Yeah. We have recovered a few, like last year I recovered one where the hunter, and I think it was at least 2, maybe 3 people helped him. And this has happened on multiple occasions where I've tracked after a grid search, where we get the last blood and Callie takes me through the woods to a spot, and then I get back and talk to the hunter. Oh yeah, that's what I walked there and did this, and Callie was following them. In one instance, Callie took me to last blood, took her right, and then we got on a trail and we worked that trail all the way around, little nice golf cart type trails through the woods, and took me right to a hunting blind. And the lady I tracked for said, yeah, that's where I was hunting. She had circled back to her blind after tracking. And so Callie was following. On the restart, she took the right way.
But she had to follow 2 tracks to get to the right.
She had to follow this deer scent that she was following, then back to where the lady had picked up on her boots. And then when I restarted Callie, she took me to the deer on the second attempt. And so that's what happens with grid searching. You basically, another analogy we like to use, and we share this picture a lot, is it's a playground with fresh snow, and there's one set of tracks going through it. Yeah. And then the next picture, it looks like a bus full of kids got dropped off, and they played in the playground for 6 hours, and there's tracks everywhere. Yeah. the first picture, this is what a track looks like to a dog, scent track to a dog that's not been grid searched. And here's one that's been grid searched. Now that dog's got to smell its way through that mess of tracks.
Yeah.
That's why grid searching should always be your last resort when it comes to tracking deer.
How about after someone shoots a deer, kind of gives you the story that I just gave you or whatever their story is, what are some questions that you ask them?
So the first thing I ask is when you shot it, where you located, where you think you hit it, what type of broadhead were you using, weapon, if they're using a bow, most of our tracks are archery, what type of broadhead, and that does matter. I like keeping stats on it anyway, but it does matter because a bigger cut diameter blade will do more damage.
Yeah.
And so you have that working for you. But on the flip side, you get, and my data that I've collected also backs this up, you get far fewer pass-throughs with a bigger cutting diameter blade. Even in soft material, we have a lot of deer we tracked that were hitting the guts and back softer material, and they didn't get pass-throughs. Maybe their arrow's not flying straight, their bow's not tuned, and they have a big, wide cutting diameter blade. And so our pass-through recovery rate with deer that have a complete pass-through with the arrow is much higher than ones that have non-pass-through. But on the flip side, out of all the deer that we tracked that didn't have a pass-through, the mechanicals, the ones with the wider cutting diameter, fared better. Yeah. Because now you didn't get in there as far, but you did more damage with that bigger blade.
Yeah.
And so I'm interested in, okay, what kind of broadhead are you using? Did you get a pass-through or not? Were you using a lighted knock? That's another thing. When I ask a hunter, where do you think you hit the deer? And I'll jot it. Now, we send them a picture a lot of times of a deer with coordinates on it. Right? Oh, I hit it in A13. And it was quarter in two. And you kind of mentally figure out where it exited. We're using a lighted knock. Yes. At that point, I feel pretty confident they know where they hit the deer. And I've started tracking that recently in the last couple seasons. When we recover deer, every deer I recover, I take pictures of it laid on the ground, entry side and exit side. And I jot down, I'm marking on our spreadsheet where they actually hit the deer. E13, exit out of F12, or whatever the coordinates may be. I'm just making them up at this point. And I'll compare it to where they said they hit the deer. And I have a little graph, 0 to 4. 0 means they were dead wrong. They were nowhere close to where they hit. 4 is perfect. And I give them a perfect score if they're just pretty close to that spot. Yeah. The guys that use lighted knocks are far more accurate where they think they hit the deer than the guys that didn't. And I think they're maybe just seeing a streak of maybe white fletching, or they're seeing something, or they're guessing, and they're not, or there are a lot of guys that, where do you think you hit it? Well, I'm not sure, but I was aiming for the lungs. So I'm assuming that's where I hit. Right. No, just say you don't know. Right. I shot and I hit it. Yeah. But I know a lot of people I see the excuses, or not the excuses, the reasoning they give for not using light knock is extra weight in the back of the arrow. They want their FOC. Yeah. Or they've had issues with them in the past, maybe breaking or some issue. And I get that. It makes you, but they weigh so little to me. I don't see it as a big factor when it comes to FOC. Yeah. If it's adding 8 grains to the back of your arrow, add 8 grains to the front of your arrow or something. Right. And then just play around with different brands of lighted knocks until you find one that you like. I mean, I've been using the same type for a while myself. I haven't had any issues, but I mean, I have had issues where maybe one didn't turn on or something. Yeah.
But it's not really hurting the flight of your arrow or impact or anything like that.
I'm killing deer. I'm hitting them. I hit most of the deer I shoot at where I'm in. But I'm also spending time tuning my bow, taking to the shop, and paper tuning it. Yeah. I do that in my garage. I have there's little plastic things you can get from Amazon, little carts to hang shirts on. Yeah. I have a spool of craft paper you got from Amazon. Yeah. And I just pull it down and take clothespins and clamp and shoot my bow through it. It's something that's that cheap and easy to do. Just a paper tune and make sure your arrows are flying straight. But anyway, so I guess where were we?
Where did I hit it? How confident am I in? Where am I on where that was hit? What else? Anything else that you're asking?
Oh yeah, and then how long did you wait before you started tracking? Are there any property lines nearby? Mm-hmm. And when I say nearby, within a few hundred yards, because we can cover 200 or 300 yards in a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
If there is, I won't turn down a track. I said, but start getting permission while I'm driving there. Start heading there. And I need permission from them so that we can continue on. In Minnesota, you don't need permission. I'd prefer it.
Yeah.
But in as long as I have, we have no weapons or whatever, and that we're on blood confirmation, we just, we can blaze right through if we wanted to.
Yeah.
I typically ask for permission just to, keep
avoid problems.
Yeah. Because if they come in there and find you, and you're in the middle of tracking and they run you off, that may piss them off. They run you off. They won't let you continue the track. But if you ask ahead of time. Now, some people have a problem with dogs for some reason on there, and there's still a lot of people who don't understand tracking dogs. They think you're just going to turn some dogs loose in there, run across the property and chase every deer out. It's so much or so less intrusive
than a grid search.
Yes, exactly. Just me and a dog. I'm in and out of there. I'm straight to your deer.
The dog is on a lead.
Yes, on a 30-foot lead.
Yes.
In Minnesota, it's the max we can have. So they're not running loose. And it's usually, like I said, I usually have the hunters hang back and I have a walkie-talkie. There's no sense in two of us going there because we may have to restart. But in most cases, she takes me to the deer. Here's the deer. The hunter drags it out and you're in and out. Whereas when these same people that are reluctant to let a tracker come in there, we'll let them. Well, no, they can go search, and they got 5 or 6 guys.
They got spotlights.
Yeah,
they're yelling to each other.
Middle of the night, running them out. The deer everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And dogs, deer are more at ease with dog scent because they're used to coyote scent and everything else than a bunch of people scent. So basically you have one person going through there.
Yeah.
And leaving a scent trail if you're that concerned. Yeah. I don't think it really bothers them at all. I'm from South Carolina originally, and we could hunt deer with dogs down there.
Yeah. And
even those guys, will tell you, like, after they've run their dogs through a property, the next day on trail camera, they got deer showing up everywhere.
They came right back.
Going right about their business. And so it's a temporary disturbance for them with hunting dogs. For my little slight intrusion is almost no disturbance.
From the tracker's perspective, right, you want to take a track on an animal that you believe is dead or lethally hit, right? You don't want to take a track on a deer that isn't going to be killed from that shot.
Yeah, in reality, we don't want to be tracking deer that aren't lethally wounded or mortally wounded.
Yeah.
But at the same time, most trackers, I can't say all of them, because some of them will avoid tracks that don't put the odds in their favor. Most of us will take any track. If the hunter says, I'd still like you to come out there. Okay, I will.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a lethally hit deer, but you never know until you go. It's the saying they have.
Yeah.
And some of these guys will find deer that they were confident I've even found deer that I was like, we're not going to find this deer. And you're almost about to give up, and there's the deer. And so unless you go, you won't know. So, I'm sure there's guys that are looking at this and saying, I'm going to filter my tracks, which that's their business. They can do it if they like.
Yeah. Because this is volunteer.
For the most part.
Yeah.
There are some guys that charge.
Yeah.
And, you're looking at, that's going to be the number one question. How much does it cost for a tracking dog to come out?
Yeah.
For the guys that do it as part of an income, you're looking at, it may be a flat fee of $200 to $300. They may charge a fuel fee or just a kennel fee where they come out, and then they charge you another $100 if they recover it. So $100 to come out, $100 if we recover it, kind of an incentive. But I'd say probably 80 to 90% of the trackers don't charge anything. They take tips.
Yeah.
I'm in that category.
Right.
If you give me $10, if you give me $0, or if you give me $200, I mean, that's on you.
Yeah.
I find that most people, if you set a flat fee, because I did that for a season, I set a flat fee, $60 just to cover my fuel. Most people will pay that $60.
Right.
Not most. I shouldn't say most. A portion of them.
Yeah.
And it's usually on those worst tracks. Like I drove one time, I had 4 tracks lined up. I put $100 of fuel in my truck to get there and back. I only took 2 tracks that day. The first track I got to, the neighbor wouldn't let us track on their land with the dog. And so it got canceled. The guy still gave me, $20 for coming out or whatever it was, gave me extra. But I'd already put $100 of fuel in my truck.
Right.
Not $100 yet, but I'd filled it up. I got to the next track where I had 2. One had canceled before I got there. So, the other guy paid me a track for his deer and I got that. It equaled, 120, and it was like 4 hours away total. 4 hours, 8 hours of driving round trip.
8 hour round trip, sure.
And I had 4 tracks. The 4th track, the guy was at a bar. He said, meet me at the bar. That's where we'll be waiting. By the time I got close there, I said, okay, I'm about 30 minutes out. I think they'd had enough beers, and it's like, yeah, we're not going to go track this deer.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And so that got canceled. So when I got home after 8 hours of driving, and that one track was pretty brutal. The first, I only did the one, actually got out of the truck and tracked. I had $0, and all the wear and tear. And I got home, went to bed, and I was like, I won't do that again. But yeah, when I started, I got rid of my flat fee and just started taking tips. People, they find these big bucks. I've actually had to give money back because they're so excited and they pull out their wallet and like, here's $300. It's like, nah, that's way too much. I was here 10 minutes, dude. I'd like to take most of that.
Yeah, but think about it this way. Someone's hunting a big time property and they shoot a big deer. All the time and money they've invested to get the shot on that deer and then to recover it, $300. That may be a drop in the bucket if you add up all the food plot dollars and that's tree stands. And
probably so.
Yeah.
And that's the other reason I quit charging a flat fee is because there's a lot of hunters out there that don't have the money for big properties and food plots. And there's like a guy I tracked for. I don't know what his income situation was, but he seemed to live a meager lifestyle, and he drove a small car, nothing fancy. And I'm just giving an example. This could be anybody. Maybe he doesn't make a lot of money. He enjoys hunting. He does it on a budget.
Yeah.
He doesn't have $100 or $200 for a tracker. And I sure would like to help him find his deer and put, that extra venison in his freezer.
Right.
And so if he gives me $20 or he can only afford $30 tip or nothing, that's fine.
At least
so it leaves it up to you, what you're making as an income and what you can afford, and say, here, I have $40. That's all I got. That's fine. Yeah. I'm not going to get upset with it whatsoever.
Yeah. How many deer have you found? Do you know? Or has Callie found? Do you know?
I think it's 60 something. We haven't, we don't track like a lot of these guys, like the guys that do it full time.
Yeah.
And I have a buddy in Wisconsin that does it full time. Well, I have several over there, but one in particular I'm thinking of. He doesn't charge anything. He takes tips.
Yeah.
And he does 200 or 300 tracks a season.
Wow.
A ton.
Yeah.
Myself, I usually do around 30.
Yeah.
If you think about it, if I'm taking a track a day, that's 30 days. That's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah.
And so we have taken 151 tracks over our 5 seasons. Yeah. And that pales in comparison to one guy's doing 300 in one season.
Right.
But, and she's found 65 of them. Uh-huh. So she's a little bit above average when it comes to success rate.
Yeah.
And people, you'll have the comments, that doesn't seem very high success rate.
Yeah.
Well, when you factor in how many deer are still alive that we track.
Yes.
Because you can't find a live deer. You got to find a dead one. We get, I think 16 or 17% of the deer we track, we get confirmation on trail camera later.
Okay.
So there's part of it.
Yeah.
Another 15 or 20% of the deer we track, we hit a property line and can't continue the track. So there's another part of it.
Yeah.
So if you rule those all out,
yeah,
she has like a 60 or 70%. Just guess. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but
yeah.
So she has a much higher success rate on tracks that we were able to complete
on dead deer. Yeah. Yeah. And like the important thing to remember too is like these are the deer that hunters couldn't find. right? So these are like the worst
case scenario.
Worst case scenarios, hardest tracking jobs for whatever reason. Either poor hit or just tough terrain or some extenuating.
Not all of them. Some of them are easy. Some of them I've shown up and the deer's 30 yards past their last look.
So like our buddy Josh last year. Like tell that story.
So didn't he lose a deer somewhere else?
He had lost a deer somewhere else on a different hunt in a different state.
Yeah, and that had him worried.
He had shot his gun and he knew that he was shooting well, but still the fact that he had missed this or had lost this deer really bothered him.
Got into his head.
Rattled him a little bit.
It does that to me too. I shot a doe in Nebraska and it really got under. I went home early because it bothered me so much I couldn't find this deer. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people say it's just a doe. To me, every deer is, I wouldn't say equal, but they mean a lot to me.
They're all important. Yeah.
So I know where he's coming from. And I knew part of that story, and y'all were having trouble finding blood.
We found hardly any blood.
Yeah.
So I was there the night that Josh had shot this deer, and he had it on video. And this was with the rifle, inside 120 yards. And we went out and started to look and just found a little blood. And him and the videographer kind of had a little differing opinions on where the deer had entered the woods. Yeah. And instead of going and bombing into the woods, Josh was like, let's get out of here.
Yeah, he was playing it safe. He told me that on the phone. And I told him, I said, the deer is probably not far away. I felt pretty good about finding it until I arrived. And then I saw the woods. They seemed so open to me. And I'm like, you guys looked in these woods last night, but it was dark. Y'all were using flashlights, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a big difference during daylight versus that. I'm like, well, this deer is probably not nearby if you looked in these woods is what I'm thinking. And I had trouble getting Callie to lock on that scent at first, but like the third attempt, she finally locked on and she went straight across the cut cornfield, right in the direction that Josh said the deer went. And we went straight in the woods and said, all right, let's see where she goes. And we didn't make it far in those woods at all. And there was the buck laying there. And I was like, Josh, here's your deer right here. And he was so excited. He come running over there and gave me a big bear hug. And I'm like, how did you not see this deer last night? And what it was is they thought the deer had entered the woods farther down the edge. And so they had basically went past the deer without shining or looking in there.
Yeah.
And so that's a case where, and I see this a lot of times, hunter maybe had a bad experience. They're playing it safe. And we come in there and it's not that far away. And there's nothing wrong with that,
You'd probably rather have it that way than someone be overly confident and bomb in there and bump a deer.
I'm torn on that thought.
Yeah.
Sometimes I enjoy that, but I also enjoy finding ones that a hunter can't find. I want the hunter, when I find a deer, the first words come out of the mouth is, we never would have found this deer without Callie.
Right.
That's what I want to hear.
Right.
It makes me feel a lot better. Now I'm happy to be there.
Because then you're recovering deer that would have been lost otherwise.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The 1.3 mile track, for instance, the grid search last year, where we found that one. There was a lot of them that made me feel so good because I believe with 100% certainty these people wouldn't have found this deer until it was too late. They may have found it the next spring in antlers or something.
Hey man, when you feel pretty good that you killed it and then don't recover it, that is just the worst. I mean, it's the worst hunting feeling in the world. So to kind of save someone from that, it's like two, like
that's the other thing. That's the other thing. Even deer we don't find, I can go in there and I could, with a fair amount of confidence, tell the hunter after analyzing the situation and what the dog's doing that your deer was likely not lethally wounded. Yeah. And that makes them feel better, and they'll go out and try to kill another one. Yeah. Whereas if I wasn't there and say, my dogs tell them, and the dogs can tell you, because what happens is the deer's running, he's releasing those injuries, odors or whatever, and the dog's picking up on that. Eventually that deer calms down if it's not mortally wounded and it stops dumping those odors. And the dog says, yep, I'm not interested in following this deer anymore. We've gone, 1,000 yards. There's no blood, and I'm not picking up that odor anymore. And the dog had a lot of handlers. When they told me this early on in my track, I was like, yeah, right. Yeah. Dog doesn't know that. Yeah. But they do. I mean, now the more I've learned, it's like, yeah, they're picking up that odor early on, but now they're not picking it up. They've just said, okay, this deer's not alive. And then what happens 6 days later or 2 weeks later, we get a trail cam picture of this deer eating. And I'm like, yep, dog was right.
Yeah.
Deer's not dead.
Yeah.
And so that's a big confidence, or it makes the hunter feel a lot better when they've done all they could. Because once you get a dog in there and they don't find it, odds are that deer's not dead or is not recoverable.
Yeah.
And the hunter feels better that they've made every attempt to at least recover it. And then if you tell them, say, hey, put some trail cameras out, you're likely going to get this deer on camera. And a lot of times they do. Unless it's like during the rut. Yeah. And it's a new deer that just showed up out of the blue and you shot it, you'll never see that deer again. Yeah. But if it's a homebody you have history of trail cameras with, put your trail cameras out there or keep them running. And the average for me is usually about within a week or two, somewhere in that time frame, you'll get the pictures. Maybe they go off to a little secluded place they like to go to when they don't feel so good. But then they'll get back to their routine and then you'll have them on picture.
Yeah. Okay. What about one thing I was thinking about that I wanted to ask you is kind of like the old kind of deer tracking wisdom, like deer won't go uphill, injured deer go to water.
I wish that was the case.
Deer like to go. Deer always will go on trails. Take a hurt deer will take path of least resistance. They'll just stay on trails. Is any of that stuff true?
What I see is deer go anywhere they want to go to get away from danger, whether it's uphill or downhill. Yeah, especially initially after the shot, and even farther on. The one we tracked 1.3 miles, that was in bluff country. Yeah, we were. Let's see, how far away we were. 3/4 of a mile away when he was still going uphill, and then he went way down a hill. Yeah. If people have never been in mountainous terrain, it requires effort to go downhill just as much as it does uphill. True. The deer don't seem to matter to them which direction they go. As far as water, and I've been keeping stats on this, when I find a deer that's within 50 yards of water, which is a pretty good distance, but if they're within pretty close proximity, 50 yards, I consider pretty close, I'll jot that down as found near water. Mm-hmm. Or if I find them floating in water. I researched the amount of water, surface water in Minnesota and Wisconsin. It's like 30%. Yeah. 30% of the entire area is water. That's surface water, whether it's a marsh or stream or a lake or something. Yeah. And so you would think that you'd probably find about 30% of the deer dead near water. Of all the deer we recovered, we'd found like 1% of them next to water. And only one of them, I think, intentionally went there, or two of them. We had one last year, went there. 2 days later, it was like a liver hit, lived for several days. It went to the neighbor's pond and drank. But early in my season, we found one bedded up right next to a water hole, and it was a gut shot. Yeah. And we think the blood trail went south, across a fence, headed north, stopped. That's where they lost the trail. Callie went due south from there and went across a couple properties and went to just a teeny little water hole. And there was a little tree, and it bedded under that tree. I said, that deer got there, stopped and thought about it for a minute and said, okay, I'm going to get water. We found another one bedded near water, but that was an impediment. I still marked it out. It was found near water, but it was a long swamp with water, standing water. And the deer was running in that direction and got to it and didn't want to cross it and just bedded down and watched its back trail. Gotcha. It didn't go to water. It just got in the way. And that's why a lot of people find deer in creeks and stuff drowned. They didn't go there to drink. They were crossing it, and it required a lot of effort. That's my belief. Yeah. When you only find 1% of your deer within 50 yards of water, or in water, and the area up here is so wet, the odds are you should find more if they were intentionally seeking it out. They go up and downhill without a pit issue. I don't think they intentionally search out water. They may go to cover. A deer only goes somewhere when it has, intentionally when it has a chance to think about it. When you shoot it and it's running, it's just running. Most of the deer we track are on a straight line. Once they, make their initial curve and get going, they continue that line. Like if a deer was heading north at 50 yards from your stand or 100 yards from your stand, we usually find it in a northerly direction. It doesn't make a big J hook and back around. Now, deer that are those are mortally wounded deer.
Yeah.
Deer that were hit in the liver or guts or somewhere where they're going to live, 10, 12, 24 hours. They run off from the initial impact and then bed down. And then they either get bumped by coyotes or they get up because they're thirsty or they want to get better cover. Now they've calmed down. They can think about things. So now they may hook back around and get where they came from, or they may go down to water, get a drink, or there's better bedding cover near the water usually. Mm-hmm. And so those are the deer that make all these different turns and routes when you track them the next day. Yeah. But for the most part, when you shoot a deer, they do stay on deer trails for the most part. Yeah. When I'm tracking a deer, we're usually walking on deer trails. Yeah. They know where every trail in the woods are. Yeah. They're not going to go busting through brush except for at the initial shot when something smacks them that hurts. They'll go barreling through the brush. But as soon as they hit a trail, they follow those trails. Yeah. Do those deer that you're talking about that kind of get up from their initial bed and now have like decision-making capabilities, do you find that they often go to core bedding areas on the property? Like, say I have a place that I hunt and we kind of know there's some key like core bedding areas that really thick. There's no roads by them. No one really goes in there ever. Will like a gut shot deer head to somewhere like that more often, or is that not really how it works? Typically the deer I find, they don't make a large trek anywhere. The ones that live longer, they seek out a spot that they can watch their back trail with cover. Mm-hmm. One in particular last year that we tracked, he didn't make it far. Now, it's complicated because we didn't have blood confirmation to plot his full course. But we tracked that deer, and Callie took me up through some thick stuff, not far from where they shot it, a few hundred yards from where they shot it. And we went and searched some more, and we came back through, and we ruled out a lot of areas. And when we came back through this thick area, she took me through there again. She wanted to go to a certain spot for some reason. We ended up finding blood there. Mm-hmm. Under closer analysis, it appeared to be a wound bed. And you can look at the shape on the matted down grass and stuff, and you can figure out which way the deer was laying. So it looks like a bean shape, and you kind of see their rear, the big hindquarters where it pressed it down, and then where the front legs. So I had an idea of which way this deer was facing. And it looks like he was facing straight from where he came, and there was like an access logging road that the hunters and stuff had walked. And so if he was there when the hunters came through, he was 30 yards from them, and he watched them walk right by them on that logging road. And I've seen that happen enough times. A couple of years ago, same thing. I tracking at night, my light shined on the eyes. He had stopped and was bedded and facing straight back to me. Another instance, I think that same season where we tracked deer, still alive, had his head up, looking back. They bed where they have a good vantage point, some good cover, and can watch their back trail if they live longer than, if they live that extended amount of time. So that's what I normally see. I don't see them seeking out, like going way over here. Now, I did track a doe, and I don't know if she was trying to get to her bedding cover or where she was trying to get to, but she came out of bedding where the guy was intentionally hunting bedding behind him. She came out of there. He shot her, and there was several with her, and they ran across the field, and then they went towards a house and went around the backside of the house and went down to the right, down in the woods. Well, when we tracked her, we followed that route, and then Callie took us down to the marsh, and we ended up behind his stand at one point. So she had made a big circle. Now, we weren't right behind it, but, we were behind in that direction. The doe had made a big circle, basically trying to get back to where she came from. And it looked like she had bedded at one point, and I don't know if coyotes jumped her or if when they were tracking, I don't think they tracked her that far, but something either got her up. Maybe she got thirsty during the night, because the track continued from there through the marsh, away from the stand, to a little, there was a lake there with like a road with houses on either side, like a little subdivision type deal, a tennis court. Oh, really? And she took me right to there's a barbed wire fence. We saw a drop of blood on the other side. I knew she went across. Got permission from the people that live next to the tennis court. Callie took me right along the fence of the tennis court, crossed the road into a yard on the other side, right to the lake's edge. And I was like, I think your deer's in this lake. you know. And we scoured the edge there where she took us, and we couldn't find it.
Yeah.
And so we made some random. I grid search sometimes with her nose, just because they can smell better than we can see.
Yeah.
And especially in thick cover. And so if I don't find a deer, I usually spend a couple hours there, at least 2 to 3 hours, just ruling out other areas to make sure we didn't find a deer. Typically, when we find a deer, we're there from the time I started to the time we find a deer. It's usually a half hour.
Wow.
Or less.
Wow.
I mean, she finds it pretty quick.
Yeah.
Unless you get into those really long tracks, then we may be there for hours, or I may continue the next day. I was like, this deer needs more time. We actually tag team a track last year, me and another tracker. I'll tell you about that later. But anyway, so that track, we didn't find the deer. I get a call from the hunter several days later. There was a fellow that lived on the lake, and he was at a local bar or somewhere getting his hair cut. I can't remember. I think it was at a local bar, maybe. He was talking to someone that worked there, and it's like, yeah, this deer washed up in my yard.
Oh, no.
And the lady knew the hunter, knew the story. She's like, so she called him immediately. I think we found your deer. And it was one house over from where Callie took me. So it got in the water, probably submerged or drifted up. And it was, wasn't apparent when the picture I got from it on the shore. It was just like a little bump of a log of his chest sticking out of the water. And he pulled out of the water, and there was his entry and exit wounds. And
no kidding.
So, I mean,
yeah,
that's a case where a deer made a big loop around and bedded back where it came from in the bedding area, and then got up at some point and probably got thirsty, went to the lake, and then, or maybe it heard inside, burned, and then got in the water, and that's where it expired.
Yeah. Interesting. What other, just for people out there, deer hunters out there, as they are going out to, consider calling a tracking dog on tracks that they're not really confident on. Just what other advice do you have out there for people?
Well, number one is find out who your local tracker is.
Mm-hmm.
Have that number saved in your phone ahead of time. Do the search now. And even if you want to, text them. Say, we had a guy recently contact us, say, hey, contact you guys. I think it's a great idea to go ahead and find out who's available, what the situation is, and let them, know I'll be hunting the area. Because the last thing you want to do is, perfect case is myself when I shot that doe last year in Nebraska. Never in a million years would I thought that I would need to call a tracker, but I'm, 10 hours from home.
Right.
I need to find this deer. I wanted to find this deer. And so I start looking for a tracker, and I had very little cell service. So trying to get online and find those contacts was one thing. But I had weak service, but a text will go through weak service. So if you already got a tracker's number saved in your phone, you can shoot a text out. Hey, I have weak service, but I can get a text out. Are you available to track?
Yeah.
So have those numbers already saved. And the first sign that something is going wrong, maybe consider calling a tracker. Like I said, most of them, 80-90% of them don't charge you anything. Just take a tip. You got to consider, what's that deer worth to you? And please mark your trails with tissue or something. That really helps if you're considering getting a tracker.
Yeah.
I would encourage everyone doing it on every track, because it's so nice. That's things we learned when I was growing up with reading Field and Stream and Outdoor Life. Yeah. And marking your trail.
Yep.
And I didn't do
biodegradable.
it. Yeah. Tissue disappears after a good rain. And when you're sitting there struggling to find that next drop of blood, I can tell you, because there's instances where I've dropped tissue and it's helped me, where you look back and see your trail and see a slight turn, a gradual turn, and say, okay, it's probably going this way or that way. And it's just so beneficial. And then if you get a tracker out there, then it's really helpful for them.
Yeah.
A big confidence booster. And then mark last blood and get out of there if it comes to that point where, okay, we're going to have to back out overnight. If you ever consider backing out overnight, or if you for instance, hitting liver or back, like guts, you're not going to have a great blood trail anyway. Yeah. And if it's early season, like we're approaching here, where the temperatures may be warmer, you probably should get a dog on her and track it sooner. And, there's so many variables where you need a tracker. You just have to.
It's not like a formula that you can just plug everything in and be like, all right, here you go.
That's the other thing. When you call a tracker, you can give your specific scenario and say, hey, this is what I've got. do I need a tracker? And now, not every situation needs a tracker. Before it was legal here in Minnesota, and I just learned this recently. He's one of our trackers now. A hunter called me. At the time, he wasn't, and it wasn't legal here. I was tracking in Wisconsin, and he called me up. He said, "Hey, Shane, I know we can't track here, but I'd like to get your advice." I said, "All right, what's up?" He was still in the deer stand. He'd shot a deer, hit it in the guts. He watched it run away. It stopped, did the typical hunched up kind of thing, and slowly walked away. And there was a little grove of trees that went behind. And he told me there was a fence line over there. Do you think it would jump that fence? I said, it's possible. I mean, it was like them going up and down hills. It doesn't stop them. I said, but based on what you're telling me, you haven't tracked this deer at all, have you? He's like, no, I'm still in the stand. I said, just back out of there. Go back in the morning. Your deer's probably going to be not far from where you last saw it. It probably either bedded down next to that fence or it crossed it and it's just inside the woods somewhere. Next morning, I get a picture from him. Deer was bedded right there at the fence. Where he last saw it, it got over there and decided it didn't want to cross it or whatever, and just bedded down, and that's where it expired overnight. So you don't always need a tracker. But on the flip side, that deer could have been bumped by coyotes during the night, and then it ran off, and then you didn't have blood trails. So if it's me, it's like my daughter shot one on a youth hunt in Wisconsin. Yeah. She hit it in the guts. We got out of the stand. We didn't even go there. I said, we're going to the house. We'll bring Callie in the morning. And I brought Callie in there, and she took me straight to that deer the next morning. Yeah. 200 yards. Yeah. It's easy for me to do that because I have a tracker. Yeah. It's easy to make those decisions. But trackers love to track. Yeah. They love doing this as much as you love bow hunting or deer hunting. Don't feel like you're putting them out by saying, hey, can you come track this deer for me? Yeah. And then if it's worth $40, $60 to you, $100, whatever you decide to tip them, I guess have them come out. Yeah. Yeah. Especially, anything questionable where you think you might have a struggle doing it yourself. Well, hey, Shane, I appreciate all this information, and I've got your number, so hopefully I don't have to call you with the deer this year, but maybe I will. Don't call me on the weekends because I work weekends. Okay. I take weekday tracks. I'll make sure it's a good, cool Tuesday morning call. All right, man. I appreciate it. The Outdoor Life podcast is edited and produced by Senior Deputy Editor Natalie Krebs, and it's hosted by me, Editor-in-Chief Alex Robinson. Our music is by Carter Williams and Bob Charles via APM. Next week on the podcast, we'll speak with a guy named Dan Infault, the big buck serial killer.